Please note that closed captions are automatically generated, so if there's any obvious errors or you're unable to follow along at any point, please feel free to come off mute, interrupt, and ask for it to repeat a section more clearly. And this is just a reminder to please introduce yourself in the chat. And we also have two new co-facilitators joining us today, and I want to invite them to introduce themselves. As Naomi and Quentin introduce themselves, again, please go ahead and drop your name, pronouns, location, and one thing you're looking forward to today into the chat. And I'll pass it up to Naomi to introduce themselves.
Hi, folks. My name is Naomi Cohen-Shields. I use she, her pronouns. I am the DC campaign manager for CCAN. And I'm just really excited to hear about what you all have been talking about, the stories that are coming out of this training, and to continue building community together. So I'll pass it to Quentin, I think.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Quentin Scott. I am the Federal Policy Director here at CCAN. I use he, him pronouns. Usually I'm in Silver Spring, but today I'm in Chicago. One thing that I'm really excited about is getting to interact with you amazing volunteers. I do so much of our policy work that I don't always get to engage with the grassroots folks and our volunteers. So excited to have that interaction this evening. So before we get into the meat of our conversation, I just want to make sure that we are have some community agreements. I know we have some new folks, and I want to make sure that everybody knows our community agreements, and we have 4 of them. So just taking a quick second to go over those. Number 1, we want to have a safe space and a brave space. Learning new things can be uncomfortable and challenging, and requiring us all to be brave and step into our own discomfort. But our ability to be brave rests on the foundation of feeling safe, of being seen, heard, and respected. Wherever possible, strive to build a space that is both safe and brave. Number 2, take space and make space. Beware of the space you are and are not taking up. If you have been participating a lot, try making space for others. If you have not been speaking and have an affinity for or thought you would like to share, then you should take space. Number 3, what's shared here stays here. What's learned here leaves here. People may share things about themselves and their stories that are personal. Let's hold confidentiality for one another by only sharing our learnings, not other people's stories outside of this space. And number 4, be present and lean in. Engage meaningfully, authentically in conversation that's going on in this room and not one on your phone. So before we move on, can everybody give me a thumbs up and or a heart so I know that everyone is in agreement? All right, I see thumbs ups and hearts. Excellent. All right, now that we have our norms, let's move into our agenda. Naomi.
Yeah, so just want to run through the agenda real quick for today. We have several goals. We're going to learn how to tell the story of our community, specifically of all of us as participants in CCAN's Organizing 101 mini-series, in a way that will reflect our shared values, our hopes, and our experiences. We're going to have each participant practice telling a story of us and getting feedback on their story. We're going to build a stronger sense of community and connectedness among our action members. And so, as you can see on the screen here, we will start off by introducing our facilitators, introducing what a story of us is. We will watch and discuss an example of a story of us. Then we'll brainstorm, draft, and practice each person's story of us in our breakout groups. We will share and debrief these stories in our larger group and talk through next steps. So to get us started off, setting the scene, what is a story of us? We started off our Organizing 101 mini-series with a training on a story of self, a story of why you yourself are called to organize others to be taking action on climate justice. You tell that story of self to enable others to get you. Our story of self is interwoven with stories we share with others through communities that we're a part of, which have stories of their own. And these stories can include stories from our family, from our community, from our faith traditions, from our school, profession, organizations, movements. You get the picture. We then did a relational meeting training where you shared your story of self, built a relationship, and identified shared values and interests one-on-one with others. And so now we're going to take both of these pieces together and move on to the story of us as a collective. The story of us enables us to get each other to show what values, experiences, or aspirations will appeal to our audience, in this case, our community of Organizing 101 training participants, so everyone who's on here today, and to get them to join you in action. We think about what experiences we share that can express these values, and we practice communicating those together. So in order to move people to act, the story of us needs to articulate a set of values that are rooted in common experience, in experiential us. By learning to tell the story of us, we can bring those collective values alive, and they become a source of courage, of hope, and solidarity together. And you can see on this screen kind of how we are connecting the pieces as we go here. So I'll pass it to Gabby.
So who is the story of us? So it's through shared stories that we establish the identities and express the values of the communities in which we participate. That includes family, faith, and nation, and any of the new communities that we are forming, including all of you as amazing volunteer CCAN organizers. So the character in the story of us is the people you are motivating to act. In this case, and for this training, and for the trainings that we've been in, the story of us is the people that are in this room. And so the way that we, the participants and trainers in this Organizing 101 mini-series, are developing our sense of us is by sharing stories that celebrate values that we share. We may share stories of family, community, faith, tradition, education, whether formal or informal, professional, movements, organizational happenings, national experience. You get the picture. So during the training series, you all identified a few things you share in common with other training participants. What are some of the stories that you heard that celebrated our shared values and experiences? And so some examples of this can include maybe, an educational experience, exposure to a climate disaster, hearing about the ways in which people are disproportionately affected by climate change. Can anybody mention an example of some of the stories that you heard that celebrated and emphasized shared values and experiences? I also can't see everyone, so if somebody's raising your hand, like go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to share anything that you've discussed with anybody else in your groups. I can't see everyone, so also feel free to unmute and share an example if you have one.
You can also put it in the chat too. So love of the outdoors. Great, from Tony. What other values? Echoing Gabby's question.
I imagine some people may have also brought up climate justice, equality, also love of their family members and community members.
Gabby Marlene says, a lot of us in the Richmond group talked about growing up with connection to the environment and sharing anxiety related to growing up with climate change and wanting to be able to do something about it.
Okay, yeah, awesome. So it sounds like a sense of stewardship, connection with nature is a shared value there. So yeah, awesome. Are there any others that anybody wants to share?
We have one from the Baltimore team.
I just realized the common thread that ran between it is sort of like wanting to do something instead of doing nothing, which is like sort of obvious to us as people that's in this room, but it's definitely like a value that's very powerful.
Yeah, 100%.
And we got, sorry, go ahead.
You're good. I think a value that I've noticed a lot of us share is love for species, like animal species and ecosystems, natural environments, wanting to protect them and such.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's something I noticed as a common thread too. So like, yeah, that love for and that cultivation of nature, appreciation for all forms of life. Yeah, 100%. Also, I think I saw there was a hand raised in Richmond.
I think that was it. I think they were
There's
calling in
another
from
in
Richmond Group.
Baltimore though.
Okay.
Yeah, so the other thing is I like
Ensuring the future.
ensuring the future, yes. We all kind of want to make sure that there's a future for not just ourselves, but for the people that come after us.
So thinking a couple generations ahead, it sounds
Yeah.
like. Awesome. Yeah, 100%. So thank you all for recapping those stories. And as you can see, as stories, they all describe our experience of these moments, these challenges with these we faced, obstacles we overcame or didn't, values we tested or that tested us, and lessons we learned who made us who we are, as well as our visions for the future that we want to create. So yeah, they're really powerful and they bring us together in this movement, ensure that we aren't all alone. Like these are our partners in creating that future that we want to see. So yeah, we're so glad to have you guys in the space. And I'll pass it on to Xander to talk about the story of us in the room.
Thanks, Gabby. So one thing to highlight is that the story of us may extend beyond the people of the room, like we just shared. There are a lot of people who care about climate justice, who care about protecting species, who care about building a future beyond for future generations. But a story of us only becomes real when we focus on the us that's in the room. So in Richmond and Baltimore, this is literal. For everyone else, it'll become literal once we go into Zoom rooms. And so the test of whether or not you're telling a story of us is simple. As we heard the story, did we begin to feel like an us? Does this story demonstrate the real human, genuine connections that we're starting to build among one another? So these moments that you all described and these values that you described, what we want to look for in our breakout rooms today is look for a moment that illustrates why all of us in Richmond care about climate justice. What have we done together to demonstrate we care about this? Same for Baltimore and our virtual rooms as well. When we go into these breakouts, we want to focus on the real events that we shared. And it may not seem like you share much. You're just across from each other at a table or in a Zoom room. But I think you do. During our breakout room last week, I saw people move from a self to a we. This was during our practice of our relational meeting skills. I saw our breakout group connect across generations, but with the common value of taking action on climate. All of us shared our stories of selves during the meeting, and it became really clear that we all saw the impacts of climate change on nature and ecosystems, and we started to build those relationships with each other on that shared value of taking action. And it became a story of us when we all described that, yeah, we saw that, we shared that value, and we made the choice to join this training series and get even more involved in CCAN. Since then, since we were in that breakout room over the past week, we've practiced relational meetings with each other. These concrete actions are what you're going to draw upon to form your story of us. And for groups that may know each other a little bit more deeply, the us can come from if you were on a Weed Warrior shift together, or if you tabled together before this as well. So before we move on to the next slide and talk about narrative structure, I have a little quiz. Can someone raise their hand or come off mute and share, if you know all three, share the three components for the story of self structure?
I remember, do I do all three? Just one, the challenge part.
Great, challenge is one. What's another one?
Choice.
Yay, and another one?
Outcome.
Yay, and those were all in order, that's great. So just like in your story of self, your story of us has a clear challenge, choice, and outcome. In the example that I just shared, the challenge would be the people in your Zoom room, the people at your table have the challenge of what to do about our climate, how to take action. And you make that real with stories, images, details, the same topics that we discussed in the first week in the story of self. Then for it to be a story, you have to have a choice. For most of us, that choice will be the choice to take action and sign up to join this training series. And then you have an outcome, and you can share vivid images that remind you of your community to talk about the outcome. So that outcome could be, I joined this series, I met these wonderful people, and now we found out that we both love Dungeons and Dragons and we play together each week, or something like that. So that's just an example of how we would apply the narrative structure to a story of us. And now that we've prepped you all with this information, we're going to hear from an example, and Mustafa is going to set it up for us.
Fantastic. Gabby, can we go to the next slide? Gabby, I want to make sure that you shared your audio. So let's just play the first second of that. Oh, I think I did something wrong with the slide there. There's two videos juxtaposed with each other. So you're clicking on the right one.
Came with a great deal of
Okay, so pause it and then let's bring it back to the beginning, and let me just give a little context here for the video. Great. So I want to give an example of what a story of us can look like. So we're going to take a look at an example that's going back to 2007. So this is Susan Christopher, who is a volunteer with President Obama's campaign in 2007. So President Obama's campaign was like the first partisan political campaign I became a part of. I did a lot of organizing work on my college campus for his first election. So for President Obama's 2008 campaign, one of the reasons why it was so successful, set historic metrics, goals for the development of volunteer teams, volunteer infrastructure, outcomes from volunteer leadership on the ground. And so they actually, the Obama campaign had Professor Marshall Gans, who is a professor at the Harvard Kennedy School, is the one of the co-founders of the United Farm Workers of America, is also one of my sort of teachers, mentors. A lot of the inspiration from this style of training and public narrative, like it comes from him. And so he helped to be the brainchild for the volunteer infrastructure for the President Obama's campaign. So this video is actually taken at one of the 2007 Obama boot camps. And at those boot camps, these were multi-day boot camps where volunteer leaders, like prospective volunteer leaders like Susan Christopher, came, just like you all, and invested a significant amount of time learning about public narrative and how to build volunteer teams. And this is Susan Christopher at the completion, at the end of the Story of Us training. So basically, this is Susan Christopher, like an hour from now, sharing the story of us that she came up with. So I think it's an excellent example, and we'll talk through it for a few minutes after we watch the video. So Gabby, you can get us going. That'd be great.
Well, when I showed up yesterday, I came with a great deal of hesitation. I know that's like speaking heresy to a lot of people here, but I came hesitant, and it was because I was afraid to believe in a candidate again and be disillusioned again. And I was afraid to pick a losing cause again. And I'm a busy person. I'm a mom, I've got a job, we're leaving on family vacation, and I thought, you know what, I'll just show up. I'll show up, I'll see if it's worth my time, and then I can leave. If it's not going anywhere, I can just leave. It's okay. This campaign isn't it for me. And then I sat down and Marshall started talking, and he started talking about working with Cesar Chavez and marching in Mississippi, and I could feel my heart start beating a little faster. And then I sat down in my group, and men wept who saw Bobby Kennedy shot and felt that loss of hope and a loss of everything that he embodied in that generation. And to have people like Marshall and those men sit there and say that for them, Barack Obama was the return of that hope, I just began to have that hesitation melt away. I felt my heart softening again. I felt myself able to give a little bit more of me to this process. And then we shared our personal stories, and a Catholic and a Muslim and a Protestant and a Jewish man shared their personal stories. And we had just about every race encompassed in those personal stories, all within that faith difference. And I sat there, and in my language, I would say I felt the pleasure of God in this room. I could feel how special and how big what sits in this room was. And I could feel that this campaign is about something really big and really important, and it's the beginning of a healing for our nation and a healing of generations. And the generations that came before that marched with King and people who are just now graduating from high school, we're all working together. We're mentoring each other, and we're moving forward. And I realize it doesn't matter if Barack actually fails me, and it doesn't matter if we win. It does. I'm in it to win it. But this campaign has made us win already.
Great. Yeah, if you can go to the next slide, please.
Just 1 second, y'all.
You're so good. You're so good. I'm gonna I'll get moving on the conversation here. You're so good. I've had that happen to me too. So why does Susan begin as she does? What does she say at the beginning, and why does she set it up that way?
She's talking about like the challenge, like in the story that the story itself that we've been learning to tell, and the new stories that we're learning to tell about like why it was difficult for her, what was the problem, and it's kind of expanding to all the rest of the people as well. Like, can we put faith in someone again? What is the dilemma that like is causing them to end up here, kind of a deal?
Yeah, that is exactly right. She's talking about a choice that is shared by everybody in that room, that we have had this hesitancy. We've been essentially screwed over by candidates before. Like, why, is it really worth it to show up this time? So absolutely. That is totally correct.
We have one more.
And so what is the challenge and the choice and the outcome for the story of us that she's telling here? What is the challenge that the people literally in that room are facing, the choice that they're making, and the outcome?
Is it the challenge running a presidential campaign?
Well, the challenge is the
And whether it's
hesitancy. The challenge is that she's not talking to like the campaign managers or the campaigning staff. She's talking to it's the volunteers that are in the room. Right. So she starts off by talking about her own hesitancy. It goes into the hesitancy that everybody else is having. And so the challenge is she talks about they've picked people for a losing cause before. They've picked people that have been really disappointing before. And so the choice is, do we pick this candidate to invest our time in, right now? Jamie.
I think also the challenge is people have lives, and are they able to kind of push aside maybe some other things that are going on in their life and take on volunteering for the campaign. So I got that with her, you know, the family vacation, the kids, the job. So part of a challenge is yes, is the right candidate, but also can we physically commit the time needed to assist?
Yeah, yeah. And let's see, Baltimore.
I mean, by like everything that she brings up at the beginning of her own personal feelings are probably very common, and in bringing them up and like giving them like a voice, the like what follows, she is able to sort of like dismantle those as concepts and give like you know, at the end, the outcome being like the sort of one callback to the very beginning, where she basically asserts that like even if we lose here, what matters is like the like the intergenerational, like, you know, people from different like areas and backgrounds coming together, but in sort of like setting herself up with the common feelings that might make someone cynical. It takes the power of those being in doubt in the back of the mind, that she like helps address them, and does so through like her personal story.
Yeah, that is spot on. So we've got a clear sense of community that's being built. That's as like the outcome here. A clear sense of community, belonging, people that want to fight for the candidate that they believe in. So I want to highlight, just before we go into our breakouts, a few just images. What were some images that stood out to you? Details. What made it come alive?
So, am I good?
Just say, yeah, you're.
Yeah. So I think the big one for me was the feeling of people of generational and multi-faith backgrounds coming together in the same space to give their ideas and developing a sense of community and purpose.
Yeah. Richmond.
She had mentioned like grown men crying and stuff about the like loss of hope they felt about like president in the past and like being assassinated. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then how she talked about how after like they learned about Obama's campaign and stuff, that like hope that they once felt lost was like relit and stuff. So it kind of relates him to past.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And lastly, Hannah. I'm sorry, Hannah.
No worries. Yeah, kind of touching on that, I think bringing up those really key historical moments, like with a lot of visceral detail to remind us that like those were key moments and historical periods where change had occurred and critical change had occurred, and to let the people know that them showing up there at that day, even if it doesn't go as they planned it to go, they're a part of that collectivity that's going to make that change.
Yes, that is also totally spot on. So as we go into the breakouts, I want to lift up, there's really clear values that are being communicated in the stories. I love the moment where she talks about feeling the pleasure of God in the room. Such like a genuine, real, authentic values moment. Healing for our nation and generations. This is like what we're fighting for, is that healing, and having the diverse sets of people working together. So as we go into the breakouts, as Xander highlighted, the important thing here is we don't want to be thinking about focused on a categorical us. when we're doing the story of us. We're talking about the experiential moments of us. So when we say, right, that we value, we all have value diversity, having diverse spaces, diverse communities. Really, what we actually want to be leaning into is like, what are the story moments that we share? When did you realize that, and that people shared that value? Very specific moment. So let's go to the next slide and get into our breakouts. Okay. Great. Let me see here. Xander, I need to create the breakouts, right? Oh, you did it? Oh, okay, great. Sorry, I was having a little difficult technical difficulties on my end, so Xander's coming in to rescue. So we have, as we've done with all of our previous trainings, we've got the DC breakout, we've got the Baltimore area breakout, we've got a Montgomery County breakout, and the Nova and Hampton Roads breakout, and the Richmond breakout. So join the room. That makes sense for you geographically.
How do I pick Montgomery County?
And I'm sorry, who is that?
Judy Walser.
Judy. Okay. Judy, I will put you in the Montgomery County room.
And this is Scott. I don't see a link to go to the Northern Virginia room.
Let me help you out here, Scott.
Got it.
You got it? There you go. Okay.
Is this still Montgomery County or what? We have Maeve and Jester.
Yeah, I think we've got a couple people still coming in.
Uh-huh.
We're back in the big room now.
Oh, okay.
Mustafa Hiham is the host now.
All right, I know some folks may have been like me, mid-sentence, but I hope everybody had really great and fruitful breakouts. Great. Okay. So so I wanted to actually give an opportunity for our facilitators to suggest somebody to model a story of us. And I understand we've got somebody from the Baltimore team. So, Zippy, is that right?
Right. Hi, everyone. So I'm Jester, and I didn't really want to come today. I've been having a bad day, and like I had that urge to like really not want to go out and do this kind of thing. But you know, this felt important, too important to ignore. And like, you know, I get disheartened that climate change is so huge and so complicated. And like, I can't see how it's solvable. Like, it feels too significant with too short a time. But I came and I pushed past that despair, and like I and everyone else in this room put ourselves out there and decided to genuinely engage. And you know, as we connected more and engaged more, and we, especially hearing different ideas and perspectives I hadn't considered, it just made this problem seem a little more solvable. Like there were options that I hadn't considered because I was seeing people present bits and pieces of the solution that I hadn't considered. And like, it's given me a little more hope right now. And, you know, I've actually felt better after a day of feeling quite depressed because I chose to come here and engage and see that others would do the same.
Great. Round of applause for Jester. Round of applause. Thank you, Jester, and thank you for showing up today and making that decision. We're all better for it. So thank you. Jester, can I give just a moment of coaching? Would you be up for that? Okay, great. Great. So I heard you talking about the naming, getting bits and pieces of sort of information, just hearing from people about the ways you can solve the climate crisis. And I think you were talking about that with folks that were outside of the room. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, but folks outside of the training space. And is that right?
No, I was referring to today.
We were
Oh, okay, great. Great. Was there a particular example of that in the in your breakout or in the larger room that
I mean, I was
got you there?
I was up in the we have the whiteboard in this room, but you can't see there. But we have this whiteboard, and I was you know, directing the group, and I was, you know, sort of part of it, directing, kind of doing our brainstorming, and you know, I was listening to people's ideas and hearing their perspectives. They were just like bits and pieces that I hadn't considered, bits and pieces that like I hadn't thought of, and made me feel less sort of like, you know, when you have this experience of just seeing little bits of hopeful perspective that you hadn't considered. It's really powerful, not just in those hopeful perspectives, but the idea that there are more out there that we can find and hopefully get, you know, people together to work on the solutions we need.
Yeah. I really hear that, and I think from what I share from that, it's like the wisdom is in the room and we're more powerful together. Like we can paint a picture of the world as it should be, but we need to do that together. And just like a part of building these relationships and just even the process of like brainstorming and painting that picture of the world as it should be is both healing, right? Like, and provides motivation and inspiration. So I appreciate you for sharing that challenge that you had today, and the choice that you made to show up, and the outcome is that it's healing for everybody and moving us to a better world. So
Do you
thank
think
you.
it would be a good idea to, like, if I was workshopping it, to just describe that moment doing things?
Yeah, that's exactly. I would lean into one or two. You can even name multiple moments. You think about Susan Christopher's story of us. She's got several very specific moments that she draws upon. She talks about the men sharing stories about crying when Robert Kennedy was killed. Talks about that experience of having that really diverse room and naming who's in the room. And so I think, leaning into specific sort of moment that folks can step into and hear and feel and be reminded of, would be great. Really good work.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go on to next steps. Thank you again, Jester. That was really beautiful. We go to the next slide. Great. So if you haven't, if you have not already done this, you should conduct a one-on-one meeting with somebody in the group here. Doesn't have to necessarily be in your breakout group. It could be, that you heard part of Gabby's awesome story in the plenary part of the relational meeting training, and you want to reach out to her. It could be any of the volunteers that are in the space. I would really encourage you to do the one-on-one. It's a great opportunity to practice that story of self, to build a sense of us, and to build those stronger bonds. The next thing is we're going to for our next training be doing the story of now, and so it's going to be a practice for how to make essentially a direct appeal about what people can do right now, the people in this room, to address the climate crisis. So you're going to be packaging a story of self, us, and now. So what I encourage you to do is to read pages 49, I think it's 49 to 54 in your participant guide. So it's the whole section on the linking of the self, us, and now. And we've got some suggested prompts for the story of now that you could look at. I actually want to follow up I'll send out a follow-up email tomorrow about those prompts to clarify them. So hold on to that thought for a second. And then reach out to your organizer also if you have not done so already, and get connected and do a one-on-one with them. So those are the next steps here. Anything else I'm missing, team? I want to give a special shout out to Quentin, who is our federal director that introduced himself at the beginning of the training, and doesn't always get the chance to do the organizing work in his current role, but he is a great teacher, and really appreciate him showing up today to help facilitate our Montgomery County breakout. So thanks, Quentin. All right, appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. A follow-up email will be coming out tomorrow, clarifying and reiterating these next steps, but particularly look out for the suggested prompts for the story of now.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Judy, you doing okay?
Yeah, are we over?
We are done. I'm happy to answer any questions that
Oh,
you've got.
no, okay, no, I'm organizing within the building for diversity and climate change.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Judy, for your participation.
I thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.